She was down to her last dollar. Sophie glanced at the crumpled bill in her hand with a mix of disbelief and despair. Just a week ago, she had a small apartment, a steady temp job, and hope. But when the company downsized during the holidays and let her go with no notice, everything began to unravel. By the time rent was due, the choice between paying bills and buying food had drained her resources and her spirit. Now she stood outside a convenience store on a freezing December evening, cold biting through the thin sleeves of her second-hand coat, wondering if this last dollar should buy a small loaf of bread or just one more bottle of water. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. Her pride had kept her from telling anyone. No friends close enough to ask for help. No family left to call. She hadn't cried yet. Somehow there was still a flicker of strength keeping her upright. But staring at the neon lights of the warm store, while her stomach clenched and her fingers stiffened, that flicker dimmed. She was growing invisible. People walked past her without a glance. It was terrifying. How easily someone could disappear in plain sight. As she turned to leave, deciding to save the dollar just in case, a voice from behind startled her. "Excuse me, miss, I think you dropped this." A hand extended a crisp $5 bill toward her. Sophie blinked, confused. She looked down at the crumpled dollar in her own hand, and then up at the kind blue eyes of an older man, probably in his 60s, dressed in a heavy canvas jacket dusty from wear. His hands were cracked, his nails dirty. A janitor, probably. She shook her head. I don't think that's mine." The man smiled and pressed the 5 into her palm. "It is now. Go inside and get something warm, please." The touch of his hand was gentle, but firm, like a father telling a child it was okay to breathe again. For a moment, words failed her. Her pride wrestled with her desperation. But she looked into his face and saw no pity, only sincerity. Her lips trembled. She managed to whisper, "Thank you." Inside the store, she picked up a hot sandwich and a small bottle of juice. The woman at the register looked bored, but didn't look down on her, and for that, Sophie was grateful. That single meal felt like a feast, and more than that, it felt like permission to still exist, to be seen. She sat on the bench around the corner and ate slowly, trying not to cry over each bite. Warmth returned to her body, if not yet her future. She watched the man walk down the street, stopping to pick up litter with an old grabber stick. She realized he wasn't just helping her. He did this every day. Quiet kindness. The miracle wasn't just the $5 bill. It was what that simple gesture reawakened in her. She mattered. That realization loosened something long caged in her chest. The next day, Sophie visited the library to use the public computers. She reworked her resume, applied for everything she could find, and emailed an old client from a freelance gig months ago. She also printed flyers offering babysitting and pet walking services and tacked them around town. Hunger taught her humility, but the janitor's gift reminded her that help was real and meant to be shared. 3 weeks later, she was hired part-time at a local daycare center. The pay was modest but consistent. With her first paycheck, the first thing she bought was coffee and sandwiches in bulk, which she handed out in small paper bags to the homeless down the same street she had once walked, empty and alone. Over time, she even spotted the same old janitor cleaning stairs outside a subway station. She approached, her eyes shining with gratitude, and handed him a bag. He smiled at her like he knew, like it had always been about more than a sandwich. Months passed, and Sophie prospered slowly. She was able to rent a room from a kind woman named Ruth, who hired her as part-time help for her cleaning service. Sophie started a side blog called $1, One Miracle, documenting not just her own story, but stories she gathered from people who had given or received small, life-changing kindness. She would often say in her blog, miracles don't always look grand. Sometimes they're folded into $5 bills pressed into cold hands. The blog went viral, comments poured in, thousands of strangers united by quiet compassion. Donations even came in, allowing her to assemble over 300 kindness kits, with essentials like gloves, snacks, bus passes, and notes that said, "You are still seen." She handed them out every weekend at the very bench where she once sat shivering. It all began with a single act. A man who had little gave even less to someone in need, asking for nothing in return. Sophie's life changed. Then she changed 5 lives, then 50, then hundreds. And with every story shared, more people started doing the same. So when people would ask, "Do you believe in miracles?" Sophie would simply smile and say, "I've lived one, and it only cost $1."